We have some breaking news here as the Chicago Bears have agreed to terms on a one-year deal with DeAndre Carter. The veteran wide receiver and return specialist is joining the Bears on a one-year deal. Terms of the deal are undisclosed as of yet, but most likely this is a minimum level contract with no guarantees. But that doesn't mean Carter can't bring value to the team. I'm going to break down what he brings to the Chicago Bears and what it means for our wide receiver room. Let's go ahead and get right into it. If the name seems familiar to you, DeAndre Carter was a member of the Chicago Bears back in 2020 for 4 games. He did not catch a pass for us, but he did return 4 punts for a total of 30 yards. He's made his biggest impact in the NFL as a return specialist, where he's returned at least 10 punts and 10 kickoffs every single year of his 8-year career. Carter is incredibly experienced as a return man, returning 250 kicks and punts combined in his 8 seasons in the NFL. As a receiver, he hasn't had as much success, but he does have 108 career catches for over 1,200 yards and 6 touchdowns. But there's another connection he has to the Chicago Bears. Just 2 years ago with the Chargers, he had his career year at wideout. And it just so happens that he was working underneath our new wide receiver coach, Chris Beatty, that year, and learning underneath Keenan Allen. That year, he would catch 46 passes for 538 yards and 3 touchdowns, filling in when the Chargers needed him most, as they had a ton of injuries to their wide receiver room. Keenan Allen missed 7 games that year, and Mike Williams missed 4. With a hurting wide receiver room, Chris Beatty and Justin Herbert depended on DeAndre Carter, and he shows he has good hands to go with his speed and shiftiness. With 64 total targets that year, Carter dropped only 2 passes, and he also yielded a 106.1 passer rating when he was targeted. Not bad for a guy who was their wide receiver 6. He was also productive with the ball in his hands, averaging 11.7 yards per catch and getting nearly 4 yards after the catch on average. Most people see Carter as a slot guy, and that is where he's most effective, but he lined up about 59% of the time in the slot and spent the other 41% of the time lining up out wide. Carter is a smaller, shiftier receiver who's a solid return man. He's also very athletic, scoring a 9.47 on the relative athletic score and running a pretty fast 40 at 4.44 seconds. He is undersized at 5'8", 190 pounds, and he just turned 31 years old. This is not a needle mover, guys. Just another sign that Ryan Poles is creating more and more competition for training camp and these final roster spots. The downside on Carter are his size, age, and he also has 17 career fumbles. That has come over the span of his 8-year career, where he has 370 career touches. That's a fumble about every 22 touches or so. Not a great statistic, but his hands do seem much more secure than either Velus Jones Jr. or Dante Pettis. Which brings me to my next point here. What does this mean for the rest of the Bears wide receiver room? I think this is trouble for Dante Pettis' chances of making the roster. It could also mean that Velus Jones Jr.'s spot on the roster is also not guaranteed. Carter is coming in to try to win the starting punt return job, but will also be competing to be the kick returner. Right now, I'd say the favorite to win the punt return job is probably Dante Pettis, with Velus Jones returning kicks. Whoever wins the punt return job, though, is going to earn a roster spot. And one of the biggest advantages Carter has over Pettis is his better hands. Pettis and Velus Jones have both struggled mightily with drops in Chicago. While Carter showcased his hands working underneath Chris Beatty in the past, that familiarity could pay off. I think this gives Carter an outside shot to beat out Dante Pettis and secure a roster spot. Dante Pettis has always been a bit of an enigma to me, sharing some similarities with a guy like Chase Claypool even. Pettis has a ton of talent, but it never seems to work out on the football field. Pettis has been hampered by injuries and poor performances over his last 2 years in Chicago. He had a drop percentage of 13.6% in 2022, which is awful, and then last year he missed the whole season dealing with injuries. But Dante Pettis does have talent. He was a second round pick in 2018, and he burst onto the scene with 467 yards and 5 touchdowns his rookie season. However, he's now been in the NFL for over 6 years, and he's never even gotten close to matching his rookie season production. Pettis has the talent to probably be our fourth best receiver on the roster and our starting punt returner. That's how talented he is. He's just never put it all together. Whether it's injuries or bad luck, I'm not sure really, but I'm not quite willing to write off Dante Pettis just yet. But this is definitely his final shot. I believe that DeAndre Carter was brought in here to compete with Pettis for that starting punt returner job. I don't have a preference either way, but hopefully one of these guys breaks out and we have a very solid punt returner this season. But what about Velus Jones Jr., who to this date has not looked like an NFL wide receiver in my eyes? I've always seen his upside. He has true game breaking speed, which is why I think he sticks around at least one more year. He's also strong and compact, and he's hard to bring down in the open field. Remember that Velus Jones Jr. led the nation in yards after catch in his final year at Tennessee, and during his rookie season, I talked a lot about him needing to get manufactured touches. Velus has a ton of upside still. His issue has been holding onto the ball and tracking the ball on deep passes. But when he touches the ball, he's a threat to score every single time. As a rookie, he touched the ball just 16 times on offense, 7 receptions and 9 rushes. But his game breaking potential was on showcase even then. He had over 100 yards rushing and receiving and scored 2 touchdowns, one on the ground and one in the air. 2 touchdowns in 16 touches is just simply impressive, especially when they were both over 40 yards. But he also had 2 drops and a fumble on offense to go with 2 muffed punts. And that has been Velas's biggest issue, holding on to the ball. But I still think Velas has a future in the NFL. I honestly think he'd be better at running back, but our running back room is so stacked right now, that's not going to happen this year. So Velas is going to have to be dynamic as a wide receiver 4 or 5, and I think the new kick return rules could make him a valuable special teams asset as well. So for those reasons alone, I do think Velus Jones is a safe bet to make the roster this season. And really the competition for the punt returner is going to be between DeAndre Carter and Dante Pettis. Unless second-year pro Tyler Scott can surprise and win the punt return job, but Tyler Scott is a roster lock. So that's pretty much 5 of the 7 wide receiver spots filled. With DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Tyler Scott, and Velus Jones Jr. all should make the roster. And then whoever wins the punt return job between DeAndre Carter and Dante Pettis should also make the roster. And then that leaves one more wide receiver spot for the rest of the guys. That's Colin Johnson, Nasimba Webster, Peter LeBlanc, Freddie Swain, and John Johnson. One of those guys has a shot to win the final spot. But that's it for my thoughts on this move, guys. Not a huge one, but I did want to go a little more detailed as to what it means for a wide receiver room. Let me know what you guys think. Remember to hit that like button for me. Stay tuned. And until next time, bear down.